Greetings, everyone. What we're going to do first is we're going to set the stage and give you a chance to understand what the Air Force is, what our context is, and then we'll talk about how ISO 55000 fits in with what we're doing at this point in time. As you can see, the Air Force is a very big operation. If you count everything the Air Force does, the active duty, the Guard, and the Reserve, we're scattered across about 178 installations worldwide. If you try to compare us to other entities out there, we got enough pavements that's out there to do 229 of the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. We've got enough buildings out there that's 3 times the size of Target Corporation. The land area that we have control over is 3 times the size of Connecticut. Lots of family houses and lots of dorm rooms. So we really have a very large enterprise that we deal with, almost $300 billion in asset value at the moment, and that's bigger than Toyota's annual revenue. The main reason all this infrastructure sits in place so that we can help defend the nation and so that we can make sure that we have the right pieces in place to support our warfighters. If we don't have the right facilities in the right place, then we can't enable them to do their job. And that's what we are, we're a multiplier to make sure that they can do what they need to do. Next slide, please. We have a really, to cover that much area, we've got a lot of people that have to play into this mix. This slide kind of gives a sense of that perspective. At the top, not shown in this chart, is where the people in Washington, D.C. sit. They do the policy, they watch and make sure that the engine is running the way that it's supposed to. They're supposed to be keeping their eye on the gauges to make sure things are doing what are supposed to happen. AFIMSC is the place at the middle that tries to make sure all of that comes to life. We manage and help direct execution of what's going on. There are multiple arms in what we do. Engineers, we've got contracting. We also have security forces as a part of what we do. And we also have the people that do the day-to-day services activities that make sure that we've got care and feeding for the airmen that are out there. But we work through 10 major commands, 10 major customers. You can see them spread out around the perimeter of it. And those 10 major customers talk to the 77 active duty installations that we've got out there. If you were to look at AFSOC, they have 2 bases that they deal with. If you look at AETC, I think their number is 10 right now. So it goes up and down across the organization about span and influence. The other major thing you take about there is the diversity of the mission set that we have to live up to. From the top left, where we got a brand new department underneath the Air Force, you got the Space Force that's out there. They take care of the space mission. You on the right-hand side, you got AFIMSC, takes care of making sure all of the weapons and the airplanes are in good operating order. Air Education Training Command has an extensive structure to make sure we've got the pilots we need. We've got the civil engineer maintainers that we need. All of that training activity from the lowest of the airmen up to the pilots goes through that, the officers and enlisted as well. Air Combat Command has that fighter task force, the Air Mobility Command, make sure that we get things where they need to be through the air, using large vehicles to be able to move things around. And last but not least, on the bottom right, our nuclear mission going through global strike to make sure that we can keep that deterrence mission going and hopefully never have to push those buttons that go with it. Back to the left side, you see the Pacific Theater. That's in that part of the world where we have to deliver each of those capabilities that are on the right, and USAF is listed there, where you got the European and African theaters where they cover it. Not necessarily anything new missions, but it's just deploying the same things around the world. complexity is our game. There is so much going on, so many different things that we have to watch and keep our eyes on, that complexity is just driving us to have to do things in an organized and coherent fashion. And asset management is the foundation that lets us do that from the facility perspective. Next slide, please. The Air Force has a really complex system that of how we make that happen. I started out the discussion a minute ago saying that we've got the people in Washington, D.C. that set the policy and direction of what we do. We have to figure out how to bring that policy to life within limited budgets. How do we focus what we do? Where do we go manage it and put things in the right direction? And then it's executed at those 77 installations. So the final execution decisions are not, I got muted there for a second. Let me start a little bit over here. Washington, D.C. is where all the policy gets started. It goes through AFIMSC. We have to manage across it, but the final execution decisions happen at the base level. There's approximately 7,000 people in that decision chain, all the way down to the guy that's doing that final wrench turning at the base to keep equipment up and running, but all the way up to the senior policy decision makers to make sure that we got the right assets in the right place. And that is a very difficult engine to keep moving in the right direction. We've been on this asset management journey since 2007, 2008, so 10 to 15 years of it. And we have set a foundation for what we needed to do. Now it's time to take the next leap, and we're trying to get over that last hump to be able to make sure we got things moving in the right direction. To do that, we recently sat down and helped characterize what our management system looks like. And the chart on the right of this does that for us, where we have to understand what our objectives are. We have to figure out how to do that gap analysis and make sure that we got the right things going to the right places. Then we go through the process of lining resources to those challenges. And that's all from a strategic perspective. Are we supporting the right parts of the Air Force to be able to make sure we're postured for that future fight? Then we get into the operational and the tactical world, where we do some detailed planning of saying we want to focus on area A and B over the rest of what we do. And we get to the tactical level where we try to make sure that the installations are doing, or have the ammunition and have the pieces in place to do what they need to do. All of that needs a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that it works. We have to have a good framework concept of operations. This framework defines it, but we're making sure that that exists in policy. We also make sure the leadership are lined up with that. We got to have the right data systems. If we've got some of our work that's done by outsourcing it through contracts, we got to make sure that's aligned with what we're doing, and so on through the rest of this chart. So it's a complicated system, but we've been doing it for almost 10 to 15 years now, and it's matured into where we're doing this. Now we got to put it on paper to make sure everybody understands and is working off the same page. And coming to that understanding is not an easy challenge for anyone, much less an organization of our size. So what we've gone through, and we pulled this together, is what the stuff on the left-hand side of the chart are doing or trying to explain. And we call that the document that's going to put all this down on paper, our Air Force manual for the Department of the Air Force, a DAFMAN, and that's how we're documenting what we're doing. Next slide, please. To understand where we're at in our asset management journey, we recently got Definitive Logic to come in and help us and be able to look at how healthy our management system is. Bottom line, we aren't meeting ISO 55000 standards yet. So the moral of that story is, when you got something as big, as complex as what we're doing within the Air Force, it takes a lot to get everything lined up. You can see the 55,001 different areas within the different pieces of what we do. You see we've got strengths, the green areas. We got places where we have some work that needs to go into it. But all in all, if you look at the summary assessment on the left-hand side, in general, we manage resources very well within the Air Force. So taxpayers should feel assured that we're doing the right stuff. We manage assets okay, with a disparity in how people look at that across us. We're doing okay in that area. We're doing okay with coordination and governance. And our competencies are building and getting stronger every day. So that 10 to 15 years of getting used to what asset management is and getting used to how we're focusing on delivering a good product for our warfighters, so we're all in the right spot. All of that is coming to fruition, and we're about halfway to 3/4 of the way on our journey. They say that if you're trying to introduce a new way of doing things, it takes 20 years. We're at that 10 to 15 year mark, so we got a little bit of time yet. We're going to start polishing off the edges and try to tackle our coordination and governance issues and how we monitor and measure what we do. We're getting stronger in that now. Next slide. Again, that finding was that we don't meet minimum ISO standards, but we are moving in that direction very quickly. We are working to get doctrine and policy established to make sure that asset management objectives are understood top to bottom of our organization, and people know what we're working towards and why, and working on the governance. And we're also trying to strengthen our data systems so that we've got things that are there to help us automate what we're looking at, do the analytics to make sure we're focusing on the right pieces and moving forward.